Well, good Thursday evening to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to All Good Things. Well, guys, I've been looking forward to this show now for, at least a month. We've been working on getting some Disney art here, and we finally got some Walt Disney art, and I'm really excited about that. And there's going to be more to come, too. So it's very exciting stuff. We have limited editions. We have original production drawings. We don't have any original cells, but we'll have to grow into that because you're getting into many thousands of dollars when you get into original hand-painted cells from movies. But we'll grow into it. We'll get there. Maybe one day we'll get an original Ivan Earl background here or something like that for $20,000 or $30,000. We'll get there. A Mary Blair concept painting. I'd love to get one of those. But, you know, baby steps. From small acorns, giant oak trees grow, my father always used to tell me. But what I want to do now is I want to bring in Steve Pinkney. Steve has been absolutely instrumental in helping us to build this program for the animation art. And I'm really excited to have him on board. And let's bring him in, Ronnie. Welcome in, Steve. How are you tonight?
Larry, how the heck are you doing?
You look great, man. You look great. From California.
It's raining out here today.
Is
tonight.
It really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, roads are getting all muddied up, and yeah, it's a mess. But, you know, you guys have a lot more weather to deal with than we do.
Well, you know, it finally warmed up today. I think it was in the mid-40s, so we're getting there now. We had snow, a little bit of snow. Was it yesterday, Ronnie, or day before yesterday?
A little dusting yesterday.
A little dusting yesterday, and I thought, you know, we were all done with the snow. But I think we are done with it now. You know, today we were up in the 40s, and, you know, we're starting to see less and less snow that's, you know, melting away on the side of the road. So we're getting there.
If we get down into the 40s here and we get a little bit of rain, you know, we just fall apart. And, you know, with the fires that we've had here recently, and you've seen what had happened to Montecito and some of the areas up north.
Yeah.
Even here in Topanga Canyon, it's the main highway road got washed out, not washed out, but mudded out.
Yeah, you get a lot of mud in Topanga Canyon, don't you?
Yeah, 3 times in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
But right now we're kind of cool, so let's talk about animation.
You know, you could be the poster child for Topanga Canyon. You are Mr. Topanga Canyon.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, all right. Anyway, Steve, this is really exciting tonight for me because I've been wanting the Disney art for a long time. We have some fabulous Warner Brothers art too, and a new piece from Virgil Ross too. But I love the production drawings, and I love the features, and we have some of that tonight.
I'm really excited, you know, that you know, Disney will always be the gold standard, and Disney art from the features is just, you know, only gets more and more popular. Warner Brothers is just much more rare because in the old days, the studios, it's a good point since you have production art on there tonight, that the studios in the old days just threw away the art. It was a vehicle of production. Once they had made the film, they would store it for a while, but the fire departments would come around to the Burbank studios at Disney and Warner Brothers and say, look, you're going to have to get rid of all these cells and all these drawings because they're a fire hazard and you won't be able to get insurance. And so the studios just methodically, at Warner Brothers a couple of times in the 60s, they burnt and buried their archives, made new parking lots where the storage facilities used to be. At Disney, to celebrate finishing a cartoon when they were done filming, they'd line the hallways of the animation department with the cells and then strap them to their feet and have skating races up and down the halls. So the only original art that had survived are what artists and animators and people who worked at the studio would keep and take home. And at Disney, when they opened Disneyland in '55 and then through the 60s, they would sell the cells on Main Street for just a few bucks. And now a lot of those pieces are just worth thousands and tens of thousands. But who knew they're going to be, you know, really America's most beloved fine art collectible.
Right. Well, you know, having said that we have some nice original production art here tonight, I'm going to start it off with some limited editions. But these are no ordinary limited editions. These are very special, directly from the Disney company. They're from, I think, '97. and they called them a Courvoisier Gallery series or something like that. I wrote down the name. You'll see it on the graphics coming up in a moment. But you know what they are. We're going to start it off with these, and I'll kind of show them, you know, together, you know, one after another. But we're going to start it off with Happy. Here it is.
That's so cool. Just to give you a context of what that means, from 1937 to 1946, there was a gallery in San Francisco that was owned by a guy. His name was Guthrie Courvoisier, like the cognac. And he was a friend of Disney's, and upon taking a tour of the animation studio, he saw that when they were done with the cells, they were just lying around. And so he came up with this brilliant idea of taking the cells and mounting them on a background, a presentation background, and then selling them at the Courvoisier Gallery during that time. So a lot of the pieces that had survived from Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, and maybe Song of the South up through 1946, and the silly symphonies with Mickey, Donald, Goofy, and Pluto during that time period had survived because they were originally sold through the Courvoisier Gallery. Now, later on, those pieces are so sought after that Disney was visionary enough to make a limited edition set of the characters from Snow White in these wood grain backgrounds. And that's how they would be presented at the Courvoisier Gallery. Some would have wallpaper backgrounds, some would have painted backgrounds or airbrushed backgrounds. A lot of times they were done by the Disney background artists. And Disney found that they were so popular that the Disney background artists were making backgrounds for Courvoisier. And so Disney said, well, you got to stop. We have work for you to do for our own studio. But Disney did a limited edition set of the characters from Snow White, the dwarves, Snow White, the Queen, the Witch, and they've been highly sought after. And there's really very few of them around. It's remarkable that you really got the ones that you did. They're fabulous pieces.
Right, and it's my understanding, Steve, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, doing whatever research I could, that these were made in the exact same process with the inking and the hand painting as was done in the Snow White, actually the way they were done even back then in 1937. Even though it was done in the 90s, it was still done the same way for, for whether it's posterity or for, authenticity. And they actually took these from
process. It's why they're not doing it anymore.
Right.
And they don't make cells anymore. Matter of fact, they don't even make cell paint. But all of the inkers and the painters from the old days, they've just passed on.
Yeah.
And so during the 1990s, they were able to hand paint and hand ink cells still. The last handmade film for Disney was Little Mermaid. The last third of it, they had developed the computer technology where they could just scan a drawing into the computer, and then the computer would be able to paint and move the character. But it's a lost art, no pun intended. But yes, all of those lines are all hand inked by hand. The paints are all applied individually, and they're the exact same formula that they used back in 1937. So that Cell of Happy, you could be able to watch the movie and be able to freeze frame your DVD and see that piece that's on your wall is what is on your screen. Right,
they took it right from the movie. Also, they make a big deal about this, that these are even the Disney frames that came with the series. There's actually, Ronnie, did you get any shots of the back with the certificates and everything?
Yeah.
Did you? Also, speaking to the price, doing research and negotiating to get these at the best possible price, this is really a fantastic price here, because they originally came out when it was issued in 1997. They came out at $750, okay, retail, and now they're all sold out. All you can really find here, here's a nice back shot. It shows you what's on the back of the frame. It's a certificate from Disney. The point is that now all you can find pretty much is on eBay, people selling their own that are pre-owned. And there's some of them are maybe a little bit less than this, 525, but a lot of them are more than this, and they're pre-owned. These are the brand new in the box with the certificates. Matter of fact, Ronnie, do we still have those pictures that are in the box and everything? Yeah, here. Oh, there you go. Okay. So you see, this is the original Disney packaging. Everything, they're new in the box. To get them at this price, I mean, literally, Steve, if we wanted to, we could have probably put these up a couple of $100 if we wanted to, further than this. But
Usually, let me step in here for
sure,
just a
please
sec.
do.
I have seen these pieces, for the most part, for the last several years, if ever, because sometimes I look for them myself because they're really so sought after for collectors. They tend to range around the $9.95 range if you can find them per each one, and then sometimes a dwarf like Grumpy or Dopey might be like $100 more. But I'm really kind of taken aback. I'm sorry that you're selling these for $5.25. So yes, it's a great deal. Disney makes a great presentation on the frame. It's a beautiful piece, ready to hang on your wall. But that's a really great price. So if anybody is a fan of Snow White and would like to have a hand-painted and hand-inked cell that's a very limited edition, and again, the Disney features are are always going to be the gold standard. Snow White was the first Disney feature. I could tell you some stories about it, but that's a great bargain at a great piece of art.
Yeah, my supplier, my source for these, had 5 left. I guess at one time he had more, but he had 5 left, new in the box, of 4 dwarfs. I think the only one that he had 2 of is there's 2 Sleepies.
Nice.
Okay, and he sent me 3 of the 5 because we don't need 2 Sleepies here. The one he held back was Dopey, and he said if we can sell it, you can go ahead and sell it, but he held on to it. So we'll just show a picture of the Dopey later. And the Dopey is a little bit more money. I mean, I did the best I could on these prices, guys. I did that for you. We want to move the pieces. But go ahead and search around. Try to find new in the box on these anywhere near this price. I don't think you can. They're hard to find new because the series sold out. Now, this is the Grumpy that we're looking at right here.
Mm-hmm.
One only.
You could take years to try to be able to put together all of the characters from this film, but that is a quintessentially Grumpy image of him, and that's how they would be presented at the Courvoisier Gallery, in a circular aperture that was like a wood background, burnished, and it would have the name of the character burnt into the wood on the side there, just like this is. And they're gorgeous pieces. I've seen the originals. I've had originals.
Yes.
Of those from 1937 that originally came out with the original Courvoisier label on them, and they can range anywhere between like the $7,000 to $11,000 range, more so between like around the 8 to 9 range. But that's a perfectly quintessentially Grumpy image. So if you have anybody in your life that is a Disney fan, and maybe you want to make a commentary on what you think of them, maybe give them a Grumpy or a Dopey.
I'll tell you, it makes a great gift if you have little kids or grandchildren or anything like that. And it's almost like I don't say don't buy it for an investment. That's not what I'm saying.
But these become family heirlooms. And
exactly.
It's wonderful to be able to hand down. I know so many collectors that are amassing collections that they know that they're going to give their kids, and it's something that's just passed down through the family, and everybody can relate to the Disney characters.
Yeah.
So matter of fact, everybody kind of identifies with the Disney characters, and there's some folks out there who identify with Grumpy.
Yeah, Grumpy's a great character in the movie. They all have their own thing. And here is the Sleepy, and that's kind of like should be me, because I've been burning the candle. I'm going to go to Sleepy. Are we on it, Ronnie? Okay, good. I'm going to go to the Sleepy,
Right.
here next. And I think Sleepy, that's the one we have two of. Okay? This is all he had left. And like I said, go online and try to find these new. This edition is really long gone. And
I never see them. Somebody just stashed them away from the 90s to,
Yeah.
for just, I know people that hoard animation art, and sometimes they've been right that later on down the road, they sell for a lot more than what they got them for. And
Yep.
as you say, it's no implication that you should get something for what it's going to be worth later on. And I never present the art that way. If you get a piece of art that you love, you're always going to love it, no matter where the prices go on them. But I am always surprised that something becomes really hot, and try to find something from Sleeping Beauty, from Cinderella, and more so, it becomes an issue of try to be able to find them, no matter whatever the price is. So again, the Disney features always going to be the gold standard, and as the art goes away, that is what really becomes more of an issue. And if it becomes a supply and demand thing later on, that's what you got.
Now, I think I read somewhere also, Steve, that when these were released in 1997 by Disney, the limited edition, I think they released like one piece a month or something like that. It wasn't like, here's all the dwarfs, here's Snow White, here's the Wicked Witch. I think there might even be one of the Old Hag, which is the Wicked Witch, but still, they're different.
Yeah, years ago when the Disney stores used to sell animation art, years ago when Disney used to sell animation art cells, I mean, you can go to Disney World or Disneyland now, and they do sell art, but they're prints by their fine artists on canvas or on paper, because again, nobody's making cells, and there are no more cell painters, and there's no more cell paint. But they used to have Disney collector clubs, and they would get an announcement that this piece of a series was going to be available, and everybody who was able to, get in there and get them first, who was part of the club, got first dibs on them. So, as I recall, these kind of sold out kind of quickly, and to people who were in their collectors society clubs. But the general public really did not get that much access to these at all.
Yeah, really nice. And then there is one more. We don't have the sample in studio, but there is one available. It's the Dopey, and we don't have a good picture of it. I mean, I tried to find a better picture of it. It just shows you how rare these are. Not only can you not find them new, this is like some picture I lifted off someone selling a pre-owned one on eBay, okay? But not only you can't find the pieces, it's hard to even find a picture of the pieces. But this is the actual, that is what it looks like. And you'll notice it's $70 more, $5.95. And like I said, the Dopey is probably the most rare of the whole bunch.
Well, he's the most sought after. He had as much screen time as everybody else, but everybody wants Dopey. When you see the original Courvoisier cells from 1937 that were, sold at the gallery back then, those are what's going to be at the higher price range. But again, that's a great image of Dopey. He's, that's just the moment where in the film where Snow White's going to give him a kiss on the head, and he just looks all shy and sort of dopey right there. But yeah, if you can be able to get your hands on one of these at any time,
I'll tell you what, I mean,
price, get it.
And here's the actual picture of the one that's sitting on the East Coast that is technically ours to sell. If we don't sell it tonight, then I probably won't have it, the ability to sell it next week. It's in the box. The gentleman took a picture of it with his cell phone. And there it is, brand new in the box. And
Right.
I went online trying to find a picture that would be worthy of using it in our shopping cart, and I just couldn't find one. And if we would have had it here, we could have photoed it ourselves. But
As a matter of fact, Larry, if any of your collectors or viewers would like to be able to, at some point, maybe have all the dwarves on their wall, and it's a good way to be able to start out getting 3 of them, you've got matched frames on them right now.
Yeah, these are the original. They call them the Disney frames, and at least in what I read, and that's an important part of it. But instead of 3, they could get 4 because we've got Happy, Grumpy, Sleepy, and the one Dopey. And listen, I know you guys expect me to say this. You know, obviously I'm here to sell, and we want to move the pieces. But if the money is not an object for you, okay, I mean seriously, you could grab all 4 of these, and I mean you start a collection. Yeah, there'd be 3 more to get. I don't have them.
Oh, it's a great way
But
to start.
they're out there. You might have to buy them pre-owned. There's a Snow White out there as part of this series too. There's also
If you have kids, as you said earlier, you know, with the you know, to be able to decorate a children's room with, to you know, put anywhere on your wall, these are always going to make you happy, and you know, you'll remember the moments of Snow White. It's a feel good art. And
Yeah.
it's something that makes you smile when you look at it. But yes, it's a great way to be able to start to get any of these, and with 4 out of 7 of the dwarves, you're more than halfway there.
right. So who's missing? I think there's Sneezy and Doc. And who am I forgetting? Let's see, Sneezy and Doc. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that's right. You've got Dopey. You've got
Sleepy, Grumpy, and Happy.
Bashful. You have Happy.
Oh, we don't have Bashful.
Right. You don't have Bashful. You don't have Doc.
And we don't, right. So we don't have Doc and Bashful and Sneezy.
It's easy, right?
Those are the 3 we're missing.
Well, in life, you know, hopefully you'll be able to get those and fill out somebody's collection, you know, and then it's even harder to be able to try to find the witch and to try to find a Snow White. I remember the witch had an apple in the scene, and then the huntsman also, who was only on the screen for like a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then the evil queen.
Yeah, you can add to it. I mean, that shows you how
get
rare
the
they
dwarf.
are.
Yeah, to get the dwarves, that's a real coup.
And let me tell you
get them at a
something,
great price.
Steve, if we were probably another year down the road from now, maybe 2 years, when we build up a following, as you know, Steve, we're kind of, you know, restarting. We're almost starting from scratch to build an audience of, you know, animation art collectors, and it's going to take time. It's going to take money. And so it's going to be slow, but hey, from small acorns, giant oak trees grow. But if we were a year down the line and we had a whole audience full of collectors, I'll tell you right now, I would not have this at, you know, $5.95 for Dopey and $5.25 for the other guys, because they would be more expensive and people would buy them if we had those collectors on board. Now we have a small audience. We're starting from scratch, and the whole idea, don't get me wrong, we're going to make a profit, but it's not about, you know, how much margin we can make, how much profit we can make. It's we got to get this thing started, and we got to move some pieces. So these are very modestly priced. They're priced now at less than the retail price when they came out in '97, and the edition is sold out.
No, these would be gone. You know,
Yeah. Here's the
again,
back.
These are highly desirable and beautiful pieces of art. Yeah, I would have these anyway, and they're coming, you know, directly from. They haven't been taken out of the box,
Right.
From Disney Studio. Geez, if they were releasing these now, I wouldn't be surprised to see them well over $1,000. But so, yes, if your point is that the viewers that you have right now, if you ever saw a piece of animation art in somebody else's home, or, you know, you saw them in a gallery, you know, it's not just kids stuff. You know, a lot of the pieces can go for tens of thousands of dollars. I know collectors whose names you would know, who can be able to own anything they want, and they have animation art collections, because it's nostalgia. It's something that brings you back to a time in your life when, you know, maybe the more innocence, as Walt Disney said. Matter of fact, in the DVD of the making of Snow White, there's some of the director's cut stuff in it, and at a point Walt said, over at our place we're sure of just one thing: everyone in the world was once a child. So in planning a new picture, we don't think of grown-ups and we don't think of children, but we just think of that clean, unspoiled spot deep down in every one of us that maybe the world made us forget, and that maybe our pictures can help us recall. And again, it's feel-good art, and it's valuable, and when you have something like that at a great deal,
Yep.
you're well advised to, you would not be disappointed to have this on your wall.
Yeah, this is the Grumpy here. And, I just want to say this. Usually at the top of the show, we like to show people how to place an order. We didn't do that tonight. So I just want to, in case you're wondering, how do I order something? I know my guys in the watch audience, they certainly know how to do it. But you just, in the top right corner or below the player, there's a link for, shop the Moonlight Marketplace or Moonlight Marketplace. You just click on that and it'll take you to our shopping cart, and you then just add it to your cart and follow through. And by the way, if you have a PayPal account and you're in okay standing, in other words, you're not in any trouble with PayPal, the option for PayPal credit is available to you, and they give you 6 months interest free. So literally, if you wanted to buy all 4 of these for a couple $1,000s, you could bring them home and not pay a dime, but you will have to pay the price eventually within 6 months interest free with PayPal. So that option is available here at Night Owl TV, just so you know, okay? And I have a saying, Steve, you're going to think this is pretty corny, but, and I can literally apply it to almost every piece here tonight, but I'll certainly apply it to these pieces right here, these Courvoisier Gallery Series limited editions from Disney. This is really special, a really special price. I like to say, don't laugh, Steve. Listen to the right voices and you'll make the right choices, okay? And that's my way of letting you know when something is really special, because in the old days of home shopping television, you'd see the guy on the TV and the host, and every item they would bring up there, every item was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the greatest thing, the greatest thing. And, they can't all be the greatest things. But when something comes along that's really special, I used to tell people, listen to the right voices and you'll make the right choices. And that was my code to let people know this is really, really special. And here on Night Owl TV, since it's my company and my network and everything, I am hand-picking the pieces that I bring on here. If I don't like it, I'm not going to bring it. So we're, a matter of fact, we probably could have had these pieces here 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, but the price wasn't right. But now we got the price right.
Well, Larry, I remember that you had the same reaction to the animation art as I do. And if I were to take your point about the right choices, if you're going to collect, if you're going to have an element of animation art on your walls, or is something that you want to give for a gift, that everybody identifies with some characters. I find that some people more relate to the Disney characters. Some guys might relate more to Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
But again, everybody knows Disney, from every corner of the world. So if you're ever thinking of something like this, that, of course, when you're spending hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on something, you want to know that you have a good value and that there's a marketplace for what you have.
Yeah.
And Disney will always be popular. And the classics during the golden age are always going to be desirable.
Right. Well, now we're going to move on to the next item. And this is an item, Steve, that I honestly wasn't going to put in this show. I wanted to put some of the Chuck Jones pieces that we still have in the show, which I ended up putting 4. And but this piece I felt like I was forced to put in because I have to tell you, so far of our animation art shows, the piece that we've sold the best is this one. We've sold 3 of these. I don't think we haven't sold 2 of anything else. We sold 1 of the amateurs. I don't think we got 2 of the amateurs, and we sold an etching, and we sold a Michigan J Frog, and a few. But we've sold 3 of this 4-3-2-1 piece, and so I thought, let me show it again. Maybe there's somebody else who wants to pick it up, and I guess it's in many ways easily explainable. It kind of covers two markets. It covers animation art with Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. But also, if you're a golfer, I think that's probably why we've sold 3 of these. So, and by the way, we don't have this piece here in the live studio here. If you remember, the first couple shows we did with Chuck Jones art, we didn't have the pieces in studio. We were just selling them from digital images as we were starting to really roll out our program and learn how to pre-shoot the goods and live presentations. And so we never got this one in stock. It's going to ship direct from California, from the supplier. And this one was a limited edition. How many pieces, Ronnie?
Let me see. Had 2001.
2001, and it was released in 2001, and it's a serigraph. Steve, take it away.
Well, everybody recognizes Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. I don't know a golfer who shouldn't have this piece in their office or in their home. But what's going on in the scene, of course, is, and this is really a brilliant idea of Chuck Jones. This wasn't from a cartoon moment, but it was a fantasy piece. Chuck had a wicked sense of humor. And it's Wile E. Coyote hitting some Acme golf ball grenades to try to be able to hit Roadrunner. And of course, everybody knows what's going to happen. So it's like the precipice of a gag. But you're right in that it's a crossover. I have country clubs that I have decorated in animation, in golf-related animation art. There were several Warner Brothers golf cartoons. There was Goofy Golf, How to Play Golf. There was a Canine Caddy with Mickey and Pluto. But Wile E. Coyote is just something that so many guys relate to because, everything blows up in his face and he keeps on getting back up and trying again. But it's a crossover, yes, between sports collectibles and golf collectibles and animation art. So even if somebody doesn't interested in collecting animation art, but they're golf collectors or they're golf fans, get this for somebody who is a golfer in your life, or get it for yourself if you're a golfer. It's something that you'll always smile at whenever you look at it on your wall. And it's also animation art and Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, who we can just all relate to. So what are you offering this piece for?
Well, 225 unframed or 300 framed. So you have a choice. When you're in the shopping cart, you can use the drop down and pick which way you want. If you have your own framer who knows how to frame this stuff using archival materials, then by all means, you want to save money, I guess you can. But, when you go to frame these things, you find out pretty quickly, you think, oh my God, $75 for the frame? Are you kidding me? Well, have you framed stuff lately? I mean, it's unbelievable. I had a poster I wanted to frame. I spent $450 on the frame. I'm not kidding.
Good framing is expensive. And with animation art too, you just don't want to go to Aaron Brothers or, Frames R Us and get a diploma frame that you're going to put a piece of animation art in. You want to have somebody who knows how to frame animation art with the archival material and the acid-free material. I know that you use, and we like to be able to present art with solid hardwood outer moldings and archival matting to the piece itself. It's a piece of art that deserves a good frame. And you're right, a good wood framing is expensive if you're going to have somebody custom frame something for you.
Right.
I went recently to, what is that craft store, Michael's. And I would take something like this and they would want like $400. And, you might have a coupon for 25% off, but, good framing can be expensive.
Right. No
but
question.
Again, a great piece of art, whether you get it framed or unframed, that is a wonderful golf moment, a wonderful Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner moment. And when they sell out, try to find them. And if the prices reflect that, I've seen that piece sell for $395 before. But that was one of the, just stone cold winners. Has the Linda Jones hologram seal there on the left, comes with the certificate of authenticity. That's something that, again, a family heirloom, but something that you're going to enjoy right now.
Yeah, and from the source, they gave us 5 originally. Our allotment on this, the serigraphs, were 5. So we actually only have 2 remaining. We've sold 3. over 3 weeks here, or 4 weeks, and now we still have a couple allotted to us. So that, it's not like there's 100 to sell. This has been out for quite a long time. 2001 release. It was released 17 years ago. And Steve, do you want to speak just for a second about the serigraph process? In other words, it's not hand painted on the back of the cell. There's a background there.
No, the serigraph process is where it's a silk screening, but on acetate, on celluloid. And so they do have to go color by color. It's a laborious process, and it's not something that is just like printed on a Xerox.
Right.
It's a paint on the back of the cell, just like the production art and the limited edition cells are too. So it it's perfect, really. But each one of those individual colors on Wile E. Coyote, the blue and the different blues and tan colors on Roadrunner, that's all applied to the back of the celluloid. Right. And I would also speak that serigraph cells, usually they make anywhere from like 2,000 to 9,500 of a particular image, and they are limited edition that way. 2001 pieces is at the really low end of that. And when they're gone, they're gone. And try to find them. And again, if the prices reflect that, it's more of an issue of try to be able to find something. So have an opportunity to be able to get something like this when you can.
Last question, Steve, on the serigraph cells. I know when we have a limited edition hand-painted cell, the black lines, like the lines in Wile E. Coyote's pants and the lines that outline his arms and the black lines in the shirt, on a hand-painted, the black lines are on the top of the cell and the colors are printed on the back of the cell. On a serigraph, my question is, are the black lines still on the top? And
yes,
they are. Okay.
Yeah. So the ink lines are xerographed on the top of the cell with the serigraph cells, just like the limited editions. Some of them, like the dwarves, are hand inked, but a lot of times with the limited edition cells, the ink lines are
screened,
serigraphically printed on the front of the cell, and then on limited editions like the dwarves, the colors are hand painted on the back. This is the same process. The ink lines are on the top of the cell and the paint is on the back of the cell.
Right, so if you're looking at Wiley's yellow shirt, for example, the black lines that represent maybe the wrinkles in the shirt, those black lines are on the top of the cell, which is shiny, and then on the back of the cell is the yellow of the shirt, and that's the same way throughout the entire piece. And then what you see, like the ground, the green grass he's standing on and everything, that's a separate piece for the background art.
Yeah, and just as you were showing, I think on the last show or a couple of weeks ago, how that scenery and the characters are actually two separate pieces.
Right.
And so, you took them apart and you showed how this is the cell by itself with the characters, and this is the background scenery that's on a separate piece.
Sure.
And that's one of the cool things about animation art cells, serigraph cells, limited editions, or production art, that it gives you that kind of dimensionality,
right,
like a 3D effect of being able to see like a collage almost.
Yeah.
The characters are out in front, the scenery is behind it, and you get that 3D effect.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time to move on, and we're going to take a look at our first original production drawing of the night. And I told you from the very beginning, my favorite format is the original production drawings. Although I don't, when you talk about background art, I don't know, background art is right up there. I love really great background art too. But anyway, here we go. Puppy Love, 1933. This was actually used in the production of that cartoon short in 1933. And Mickey's at the piano.
What a great image and expression. Yes, that is an original drawing that the cells were made from. And in the process of animation art, and not to take anything away from the cells, because they were on the screen and they're in color and they're shiny and they're how you remember the character, but it all started out with an animator with a pencil drawing the character, and then the celluloid would be laid on top of that drawing, and they would ink the same outline as Mickey on there, and then that cell would go off to a painter, who would flip the cell on the backside and paint in Mickey's colors on the back of it. And then that cell would go under the camera. They would take a picture of it. They'd take it off. They would take another one that had just a slight change in movement and take a picture of it and take it off and do this. And there were like about 12 drawings that were used for every 1 second of animation. But to be able to get just that moment that a character has a height of expression, let alone that, you know, the art survived in the first place. But it all starts off with a drawing. And as Walt Disney used to say, it all started out with a mouse. Well, that's a great moment from the 1933 very popular cartoon called Puppy Love, where Minnie is coming over to visit Mickey. And Mickey is playing the piano right there, and then Minnie sits down and she starts playing along with him. So the piano was on the background, and the keys were likely on another drawing in another cell. And then Mickey was on a drawing in a cell that was laid on top of that. Sometimes, you know, you have elements of many cells that are stacked on top of each other to be able to complete the scene with all the different if you had all the 7 dwarves in a scene, it would be 7 separate cells of each one of them. But Mickey, you know, he's that was just 5 years after Steamboat Willie in 1928, and Mickey still had his early. He wasn't redesigned later until 1939 by Fred Moore for Fantasia and for the Pointer. And Mickey still had those big saucer eyes. He didn't have pupils yet. But this is the model that I really like the most. Even in the earlier days than this, between like 1929 to 1931, in some of the cartoons, Mickey had little pie slices out of his eyes that would kind of show.
I remember those.
Yeah, it would show a reflection.
Yeah.
It was supposed to show a reflection, but the animators just really got so frustrated having to draw this little triangle in Mickey's eye for every drawing that they said, you know, this is just too much. So that pie-eyed Mickey really, you know, became obsolete. Just became replaced with the complete saucer in his eye. But it's a great image. It's very rare. Again, you know, Disney, for the most part, like all the studios, they threw the art away. Even the art that they sold at Disneyland during the 50s and 60s, and the art that they sold at the Courvoisier galleries were mostly the cells. There were very few drawings that had really survived. And again, it's not to take anything away from the cells, but this was the work of the animators.
Yeah.
That had to sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper and to be able to draw that same exact image every time.
Right.
So that really only survived because an animator had taken the artwork home from the studio.
And the paper that it's drawn on is what they call 12 field paper back in those days. Later, I think they had 16 field, but it's roughly 12 inches across on the paper, right?
Yeah, a 12 field. It's a term that they used for animating for the size of the paper. But yeah, in the early days, it was 12 inches, 12 and a half inches wide by 10 and a half inches high, 2 peg holes down at the bottom.
Right.
If you saw the drawing inside the frame, that they would place the animation paper on the animation table that had a couple of pegs sticking out of it so it wouldn't move around at all.
Ronnie,
And,
do we have a picture of this piece before it's framed?
We have the next piece.
The next one we have it. I always like to see that, and some of the framing jobs you see will actually show that bottom with the holes cut out and everything. But, you know, when I first started learning about animation art and getting into it, Steve, like everybody else, I was drawn to the colors, you know, and I like the cells and everything. But it doesn't take long. The more you start looking at this and start, you know, really getting into what it is and how it was made, you know, you might call it an acquired taste. I really can appreciate the pencil drawings because, as you say, that's where it all comes from. And to think, you're seeing him playing the piano. Now, his hands are cut off because On the background, there's a piano there, and you don't see the full hand. But to think that the next picture after this one looks almost exactly like this. Maybe the mouth moves just a hair, the finger might move up a little, just a hair, and they do maybe, I guess, back in those days, they probably weren't doing 24 per second, but they were probably doing 10 or 12 a second, I would imagine.
They're using 12 drawings per second. They would photograph them twice, and you're right that there was
The slightest movement.
There wasn't that much that was that really had survived from the old days of any of the. If Disney had this available, they wouldn't sell it. It would go into their archive. And I've mentioned this before, that to give you an idea of what Disney has in their archive, years ago when they were refinancing Euro Disney, it was their archives of their artwork that the banks had insisted that they also put up as collateral. But
Right.
this is the kind of art that a seasoned collector would have, and you're just not going to find another. It's a one of a kind.
Well, also,
Any
Steve,
drawing that was before or after is different than that.
Also, Steve, when you stop and think about it, this is not just collectible for the sake of being almost 100 years old and things like that. This is really American history because, a lot of people say that America has no, culture. Everything we have, we took from Europe, right? We have no art forms, but, jazz is truly an American art form, I would say, probably born in the 20s or maybe before that even. But I'd have to say, I mean, from my research and everything, and I remember we had Brian Smith as our classic film correspondent, who was heavily into animation. He was of the opinion that animation art was not an American art form, and I didn't want to get into an argument, but I have to believe, especially with Disney coming out with Steamboat Willie in 1928, not only is animation a truly American art form, but Mickey is a big part of that.
Well, I've heard it said before that animation art and jazz were the two arts that America had contributed really to the fine arts. And yeah, back in like the 1800s, there was a device that was called the magic lantern that was originally invented in France, and it gave you sort of an illusion of animation art, although it wasn't done this way with the drawings and the cells. But the first piece of animation art that's really considered, you showed on a few shows ago, of Gertie the Dinosaur, done by Winsor McCay in 1914, and that was American. And then the Fleischers came after, and Otto Mesmer with Felix the Cat, and Walt Disney with the Alice comedies in the 1920s, and then came up with Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie. Actually, in Plain Crazy in 1928 was the first cartoon that really Mickey was in. But the first one that was released was Steamboat Willie in 1928 because Walt had the soundtrack finished on that first.
If you could get an original production drawing that was used in the making of Steamboat Willie, or even a cell, I mean, that would be incredible. Yeah. That would be thousands of dollars, of course.
There's only one cell that is known to exist.
Okay.
Of Mickey from Steamboat Willie, and it's in the Disney archives, and it probably costs like half of Texas.
Okay, well, here you have only 5 years later from Puppy Love, an original production drawing, 1933. And again, go online, shop to your heart's content, really. See what you can find out there. That's a very good price, under $1,000. I mean, again, I know it's not the sell, but it is an acquired taste as far as I'm concerned. This is sensational. I think we should move on. We have one more Mickey piece, and it's Mickey and Minnie, okay? Ronnie, I'll go get it. Oh, you want to get it? Okay. It's Mickey and Minnie, and it's from the same year, Steve. It's from 1933, from a short called Melodramer. And here it is. And you'll notice on the framing on this one, they dropped the matting long enough down, farther enough down, or far enough down that you can actually see what you were talking about before, the cutout holes and any numerical notations and things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Sometimes I like to,
Thanks, Ronnie.
personally for me, I like to have the drawings what they call floated, so you can be able to see the edges and maybe the sequence number of a drawing, the peg holes or the punch holes, whatever you call them, and the entire. Sometimes it's nice to be able to mat in to the image of the character on the drawing, but this is a great example of the whole piece of animation paper with the peg holes. There's the sequence number of where it fit in the sequence of drawings and cells that were made off of them would fit in the movement, the sequence of the sequence.
And Steve, let me ask a quick question in here. You see the number 18 there for the sequence, but it's also encircled. Is there any significance to the fact that it was encircled?
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, on another piece that you had a couple of weeks ago.
Well, we did, but not in the show. I think that was you and me on the phone, wasn't it?
Might have been. Yeah, that means that drawing was done by the directing animator, the chief animator on that, or the director on it. So that was one of the. I'd have to look up Mickey's Melodrama to see who the chief animator was on that, but it might be one of the 9 old men. Mark Davis, Ollie Johnston, Ward Kimball, John Lounsbury. That is a key drawing, and to be able to have something that we did speak about, and I don't think that it was on the air, that usually each character had their own drawing and their own cell because they had their own independent movement. That's why you would have like 7 dwarves and 7 cells and 7 individual drawings, unless the characters were touching each other. And in this case, Minnie is trying to stick the padding back in Mickey's suit in this Mickey's Melodrama where they're doing a stage play. And Minnie is touching Mickey. And so you have that rare benefit of having 2 characters on the same piece.
And that's why it's a little bit more money than the other one at $725, and this one's $825.
Mm.
But if you're a big fan of Mickey and Minnie, I mean,
Disney drawings can go for thousands and thousands, depending on what it is, and depending on the, is it a full figure character, as we've spoken about before? Is it, in this case, the height of action? You can be able to see. It's a funny thing, a lot of people may not know. Whenever you see Mickey and Minnie, and however they're turning their head, if it's profile or if it's head on, the ears are always in the same position.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
You'll see that now. Whenever you look at a Mickey Mouse cartoon, his head may move. He might have his back toward you, but his ears are going to be
full.
They're going to be full. That's right.
Full round circles.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I really want to get off of this. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the Puppy Love and not as much time on Melodrama, but, you have 2 to choose from there if you like Mickey or Minnie. And in other words, another great value right there.
And again, getting back to what you said before, it's an American art form. It's an heirloom. It's all part of our culture. It's all part of our shared heritage. And Mickey and Minnie are going to be popular forever, and they're like the king and queen of animation. It all goes back to these are the first real animation stars, and from 1933 to be able to own an antique artwork like that, it is always going to be desirable, and it's always going to be a classic. So you've got great art.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to jump to Warner Brothers. I'm really excited about this piece, Steve, because I remember seeing a number of the Virgil Ross drawings, and they're all unique, and they're all different, and they're all onesies. They're one-offs. And I know you actually met Virgil Ross, right?
Yeah, met him a few times. Virgil was, considered to be really, I think, the best animator who worked at Warner Brothers. He came over with Tex Avery and 1939, I think, from Walter Lantz Studios. Tex Avery stuck around for a few years. Virgil originally worked in Tex Avery's animation unit, and then when Tex went over to MGM to do the Red Hot Riding Hood cartoons, Virgil stayed at Warner Brothers, and he ended up getting absorbed into Friz Freeling's animation unit, and he worked there, into the 1960s. But each of the Warner Brothers directors, Chuck Jones, Friz Freeling, Bob Clampett, Bob McKimson, Tex Avery, they were all responsible for creating different characters. And Friz Freeling had created Yosemite Sam and Sylvester and Tweety and several others. And matter of fact, Yosemite Sam was a caricature after himself because he had a big red mustache and had a really nasty disposition. But Virgil Ross was his chief animator. And so these were the characters that he drew. And later on, in the late 80s and early 90s, Virgil Ross drew some drawings from moments of the cartoons that he and his manager would submit to Warner Brothers for Warner Brothers to make limited edition cells from. And the best-selling limited edition cells that sold through the Warner Brothers studio stores were those of, and the fastest-selling ones were those of Virgil Ross. This is an original drawing that he did. I'll tell you what this is from. There was the most popular limited edition cell that the Warner Brothers studios did in the 1990s was a piece called Looney Bin. And it showed like a cutaway of a house, of a two-story house. And in each of the rooms, the different characters were doing different animation jobs. So it was this great juxtapose of having the Warner Brothers characters doing the animating. So in this particular room, it had Foghorn Leghorn, Yosemite Sam, Daffy Duck, Tweety, Henry Hawk, and Bugs Bunny, each doing the voiceovers for the cartoons. And
I've
and
seen
Yosemite
that one.
Sam,
I've seen that one.
Sam is conducting them. So this was what was used to be able to make that limited edition cell with, and Foghorn Leghorn is using his big voice to do voiceovers, and everybody else's. But that's an original drawing. I own Virgil Ross drawings, and I've seen them sell for the most part between like about the $9.95 range to a couple $1,000s. I've seen some sell at auction for a little over $4,000, and that's not to imply that this is worth. What do you have this for?
$6.95.
This is a great bargain from the best animator who worked at Warner Brothers.
No question.
Yeah, and an original piece, and signed by him. It's a great image, and it's a great value.
You know what's really amazing too, for me about this, is that he was at a pretty advanced age when he drew these. I mean, he drew these in the 90s, right? And I think he died in 96 or 97.
That's right, 96. He was encouraged by his manager to keep on drawing, to keep your chops up. But I'll tell you something too, Larry, that a lot of the animators lived to a ripe old age. They lived into their 90s.
Yeah.
They lived to be 100. They lived to be 99. And it's because they always had something to look forward to. Every day they got up and they drew. It was something that they loved. It wasn't just a job, but they were artists. They were fine artists. And they continued to draw. And sometimes, into their last years, they still just had,
look how sharp, look how great this is, the artwork. I don't know what age he was when he died, but he must have been certainly over 80. I mean, he was probably 90.
No, I think he was like 96.
Okay, so he was probably at 90 to 92, 93 years old when he drew this. Look at this. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable.
Daffy, if you like Bugs, to be able to have one of the characters, that's a great thing. But you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 characters on that piece.
Yeah.
That was a lot of work. That
And
he
I
did.
didn't know the story behind it, Yosemite Sam is conducting them to do the voiceovers. That's a great story, as a great part of it right there. But
I'll tell you something funny. Virgil had told me one time, talking about working at the studio, that again, Friz Freeling, he was a difficult guy to get along with. He had a bit of a temper, and one day Virgil did. These guys were responsible for drawing what they would call so many feet of footage for film every day of drawings, and Virgil, he was working the Termite Terrace, with all the other animators and the directors and the layout artists and the background artists. And one time, Virgil had done his quota of drawings for the day, and he handed them over to Friz. And Friz looked at him, and he flipped through him, and he said, you can do better than that. And he just dropped him in the waste bin. And this was Virgil's work, and it was his artwork, and he was just really, a bit upset by that. And so he took his stack of drawings, and then the next day, Virgil gave those same drawings to Friz Freeling, and Friz looked at him, and he flipped through them, and he said, "Okay, that's more like it."
now, let me ask you, is this a story that Virgil himself told you?
Yes. Yeah.
Personally, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Didn't he live in West LA?
Yeah. I think. Yeah, he lived in L.A. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. And listen, one of the things I like about this piece was the choice on the mat. Just to give you a little size perspective, this is not a small piece. It's pretty large. You see it here next to me. But you have to almost see this in person, although I think the camera work here is doing a nice job. But that yellow and blue, and I notice on the Virgil Ross drawings, he uses a really bright white paper. It's different than when we see these old production drawings that are kind of on those 12 field, 16 field that are kind of a natural color. But
that's how they started out, white, like that.
They all started at this bright white?
Yes.
Because this piece, you got to realize, Steve, this is over 20 years old.
Yeah, well, the Snow White drawings and Mickey Mouse from the 30s, those are, they didn't, they weren't stored away in time capsules.
Okay.
So,
they weren't?
Okay. This is also 12 field animation paper also.
Okay. But I mean, it's a pretty good size. The choice on the mat, the yellow and blue, it really brightens it up. There's a lot of yellow here with the foghorn feet, the foghorn bill. You've got Tweety. You've got the little yellow over here. This yellow really picks it up nice. I think they made a great choice on this. And Ronnie, I'm going to pull it off the thing and kind of hold it so people can get a size perspective on this. What does it say there? 15 by 17 and a half. It's pretty good size. See that? There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive.
Now, people, there are people who just collect Foghorn Leghorn, and it's tough. Or people who just collect Yosemite Sam, one of Foghorn Leghorn's co-characters in his cartoons with the Barnyard Dog, whose real name actually was George P. Dog, but it was never used in the cartoons at all. And then the little Henry, and then Henry Hawk was, I'm going to get me a chicken. And so he was really only in a few cartoons, but he's in that drawing.
We're going to go to another piece now. We're going to go to a Chuck Jones piece. And I told you on the last show that we did live, I really wanted to sell this piece. And unfortunately, we did not. But maybe tonight's the night. I mean, I have to send this back. And I don't want to send it back. I mean, actually, I'll be sending it back regardless because of the fact that this is not the one that whoever buys it is going to get. But I want to sell the piece that we have allotted to us. It's Pulitzer Prize, and I put it in the show tonight because it's one of my favorites because of the size. This is massive, and the color. Now this is also a silkscreen piece. This is not just a print. They call this what, a serigraph? It's a fine art serigraph print. So all these colors are separately, with super tight registration, they're separately applied.
Yeah, and all the background art and the characters, Foghorn Leghorn, Pete Puma. That's it is a process, but they look beautiful too. The color is very rich. It's very dense in color. Matter of fact, that piece is triple signed too, if I'm not.
It is. It is. It's got I think Stephen Fassetti, Linda Jones, and. But I've got the cert right here. Okay, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this certificate of authenticity here from Warner Brothers, and I'll tell you, these certificates are just fantastic, and I love the way they do them. Here, I'll just read this as fast as I can, Steve. I want people to know. It says, Pulitzer Prize, only the second Warner Brothers cartoon to feature Pete Puma. And that's him around the corner there. But Pulitzer Prize is the first to pair him with the blusterous Foghorn Leghorn. This time around, instead of hunting rabbits, Pete's quarry is chicken, or perhaps is it the other way around? Pulitzer Prize is the fifth film produced by Chuck Jones Film Productions and the first to be directed by someone other than Chuck. Seasoned commercial director Darrell Van Citters was at the helm for this short work from a story by Stephen Fassetti and Dean Wellens. Stan Freberg reprised his role as the original voice of Pete, while Frank Gorshin, we all know Frank Gorshin, filled in as Foghorn. The film, completed in October '96, was produced by Chuck Jones and Linda Jones Clow. Mm-hmm. So there it is.
Yeah. Darrell Van Citters, great guy. Stephen Fassetti also. Stephen Fassetti and Darrell Van Citters were Chuck Jones's proteges. They picked up the mantle of doing the Chuck Jones animation art when Chuck was getting on in years, and he was wise enough to take a couple of great animators and artists and have them direct and produce his cartoons. And Linda Jones, Chuck Jones' daughter, she's a main event. She started the Chuck Jones art program back in the 70s, actually. Mm-hmm. I think I had told you before it was a Neiman Marcus catalog cover that Chuck Jones did of a Wile E. Coyote chasing a Roadrunner weather vane on the top of a snowy roof. And there was such an outpouring of people wanting to get an image of that Linda Jones came up with a brilliant idea of taking great Chuck Jones moments or artworks that Chuck Jones had done and making them into limited editions. And that really pioneered the limited edition animation art market. So Linda Jones is a very important person. And that's a great piece of art, and it's triple signed, and it's I see that it's only an edition of 500 pieces. So
right.
I haven't seen one of these for a long time.
And you'll notice too on the difference between the unframed price and the framed price, $200, $250 unframed, $450 framed. And I know that it sounds like a lot of money for the framing, but I recently, Steve, in all those years where you and I hadn't spoken for 17 years, I made a purchase on it was on eBay, and it was from a guy in Germany, and I remember a good friend of mine was telling me, and she knew a lot more about eBay than I did at that time. This was like probably 2003 maybe, and she said, never buy something from someone in another country on eBay. But I didn't care. I wanted this piece. And what it was a poster of Let's Get Lost, which was a film by Bruce Weber of, what's his name? Chet Baker. Probably my favorite trumpet player, Chet Baker. And it wasn't just like a 24 by 36 poster. This was one of the theater posters. I mean, it was big. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was even, bigger than this, but, it was a big piece. and I sniped it. Now, nowadays sniping is probably, old hat, but back then that was kind of a good trick. Like you could use another program to snipe the piece like 1 second before the auction ends, and somebody else was bidding, and I put my maximum bid at 200, and anyway, I ended up getting it for 160, and the other guy and from a guy in Germany no less, and the other guy who was bidding against me, maybe an hour later, sent me an email or a message through eBay that, man, how you got that right at the end. He didn't know how I did it, because he wanted it. And the guy actually offered me like $200 more for it. I said, no thanks. And sure enough, it not only did it arrive, but it was probably the best packaged thing I've ever gotten from anybody in my life. It came rolled in a tube, and the way the caps were on, the thickness of the tube, I mean, it was packed so professionally, it was unbelievable. And I was so happy, and the shipping was only $40. So I ended up paying $200, 160 plus 40 for the shipping from Germany.
And what did it cost you to frame it?
$450.
No,
The frame cost $450.
No, it's a very reasonable price to be able to have. That's a large piece, that Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
How big is it?
No, I know. And that piece, that Chet Baker piece of mine, I have it still. It's in storage in Bear Valley, California. And every month they deduct, money out of my account for the storage unit, But anyway, I put it way out there because it's cheaper out there, huh?
Even if you got it at $250 unframed, and you want to frame it at a later date, I'd say it was more of an issue of try to get this while it's available. If you don't want to get it framed right now, get it framed later.
Yeah.
But that's a great piece of art. It's triple signed by important people in the animation art world, and it's a great piece of art anyway. If you like Foghorn Leghorn, if you like the Warner Brothers cartoons, that's, again, it's something that would make you smile, and great for a den or a family room or your man cave or whatever. That's that would be highly recommended.
And also, I think I remember, now you can correct me if I'm wrong on this too, but I think I remember when I was researching this a few weeks ago that this particular film, Pulitzer Prize, was on some list, like maybe the top 50, top 10, top 100, it was on some list of all-time, shorts or all-time films or all-time comedies, whatever it was. I wish I could remember the exact thing, but it is a historical movie. It's supposed to be hysterically funny.
Well, and Chuck Jones, it was the only time that he did Foghorn Leghorn. Even though Daryl Van Sitters had directed it, it was produced by Chuck, and that was the only Foghorn Leghorn cartoon that Chuck Jones did. That was a character that was, as well as Pete Puma, was created by Bob McKimson, one of the other great Warner Brothers directors. But this is the only time that Chuck Jones. It's a great cartoon, and it's a great image. It's a great piece of art. But going back to what you said, you get what you like. So if it's going to be something from Disney or something from Warner Brothers, go for the characters that you like. Or if you want to give a gift, somebody likes Foghorn, you've got a real winner there.
Well, we're going to move on to the next piece, Steve, and I wanted to absolutely get this one in the show. I was disappointed we didn't sell it a couple of weeks ago, and I'm bringing it back. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, of all the Chuck Jones pieces we've gotten so far, this one here is my favorite. And again, it's the color, it's the look, it's the size. This is a gorgeous piece. I mean, even if you don't know these characters, I've seen these characters, but I don't really know the makeup of their personalities. Bugs, we all know Bugs. He's a wisecracker, okay? But I don't really understand Marvin Martian that well, or his dog. But this image is so beautiful, and the make on it is so incredible. It's another serigraph with the silk screening. And I'm going to show you the certificate, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But when you read the certificate and how this was done and how it was made, it just makes it all the more incredible. and we only have one to offer, just one. It's not this one. This is the sample that we have to send back. They've allotted us one. You won't get number 65. This is number 65. It'll ship directly to you, from California. And once again, you're looking at almost a $200 difference between unframed and framed. But I would strongly recommend you go framed, not because I want to get more money out of you, just because let the professionals who know how to frame these pieces, let them frame it. Unless you have a real professional and you have a taste where you want to put it in a certain room and you want certain wood or certain colors or certain, then okay, no problem. Go unframed on this. But this is gorgeous, Steve. Hair Devil Hair, 1948. Take it away.
That's Marvin Martian, of course, and his dog Canine. That's from the first Marvin Martian cartoon. He was only in 5 cartoons, and he is very familiar. He's iconic. He's almost cult-like. I know people who that is the only character that they collect, and they've maybe spent their whole life trying to be able to get like 30 or 40 Marvin Martian cells or limited editions or anything. He was only in 5 cartoons, but he's still a cult character, kind of like Tasmanian Devil. Also, only in 5 cartoons, as popular as he is. But this was from the first one, from Hair Devil Hair, a great cartoon. If you go and look at it on YouTube or something, it is just such a classic cartoon. And at that moment, see, Marvin is trying to blow up Earth with the Ludium Q36 explosive space modulator, and Bugs steals it from him. And so Marvin, he's so angry, and Bugs comes by dressed as a Martian on a scooter, and he says, "Special delivery for Mars," giving him, and Marvin's, and the new Ludium Q36 explosive space modulator, and they start jumping up and down. And it's just that precipice of the gag of the moment where all of them are in their best pose, their best moment. Marvin Martian, hugely popular character.
The colors on this, Steve, I'm telling you now, these colors are incredible. I would almost steal these colors for like corporate colors in some of the cases, where you see kind of the chartreuse gloves here or hands with the kind of wine color on the body here, and then you see kind of a taupe brush on his head with a little bit of a sage brush over here. I mean, the combination of these colors is just so beautiful. I love color. This is just a gorgeous piece without even the characters, just the look of it.
What they wanted to do was to send Bugs to the moon.
Yeah.
And so they sent him up on a rocket, and he didn't want to go, and they poured a bunch of carrots into the rocket, and he said, "Yeah, sure." And he wound up on the moon, and then he stuck a flag, and that I claim this, and the name of the Earth. And Marvin Martian flies up in his spacecraft, and I claim this in the name of Mars. And so you're on the landscape of the moon right there, with that planet in the background is the Earth.
Right.
And I really did also love the colors that they used in this. Phil DeGard, who was Chuck Jones' background artist, had done a marvelous job there of making the landscape and the scenery. And that was back at a time when that was from 1948, I believe.
Yeah, I think this one is 48. Yep.
Right, and that was and Marvin Martian was a response, again, Chuck being the genius that he was, that year they had the Roswell, New Mexico incident where they thought that a
UFO
spacecraft a UFO had crashed in Roswell, and so the Chuck used that inspiration to create this character, Marvin Martian, and that's when the first cartoon came out.
Right. Well, I think for the price, this one's a steal. I'm going to say it again. Listen to the right voices. You'll make the right choices. That's me telling you, jump on this. I want you guys to indulge me here. This is the certificate that comes with it. And you have to hear this certificate, read this certificate to really understand how incredible this piece is. So I'm going to run through it really, really quick. I know I did that a few weeks ago, but if you're watching now and you weren't there then, listen to this. Hair Devil Hair, Okay? This limited edition hand-pulled serograph was created from original art. The centuries-old fine art printing process of serography was selected by the Chuck Jones family as the best method to reproduce this image. Each step of the process was carefully supervised by the master printer at Eclipse Workshop in Canoga Park, California. The 25 color screens were made by hand by the chromist at Eclipse, and each color was individually hand mixed. Each serograph in the edition was carefully pulled, one color at a time, creating the rich and viscous texture of the finished work. Viscous texture of the finished work of art. The edition has been printed on 2-ply acid-free museum board paper. The screens have been destroyed. Each fine art serograph in the edition has been individually hand-titled using the rare Eberhard Faber Blackwing 602, favored by Chuck Jones as his pencil of choice. The serographs bear the authorized estate signature of Chuck Jones, selected by Mr. Jones in April of 2001 to represent his signature in perpetuity. There are 275 serographs in the edition, numbered 1 of 275 to 275 of 275. And then, as I mentioned before, 30 deluxe edition printed on black museum board paper, numbered 1 of 30 to 30 of 30, 50 Roman numeral numbered, 1 of L, which is 50, to L of L, 50 of 50. 30 family proofs, 1 of 30 to 30 of 30, 15 printers proofs, and 2 Warner Brothers proofs. This edition was printed in July 2008. The image size is 15.5 by 22. Now, 15.5 by 22 is the image. What's the actual size on this, Ronnie?
I got 20 by 20.
20 by 25 to the edge, but the actual image, 15.5 by 22. This is to certify that all the information and statements contained within this document are true and correct. So anyway, I just think it's gorgeous. It's my favorite of everything we've gotten from Chuck Jones so far. Somebody should take this home, either framed or unframed. It's just gorgeous. I mean, it just really is. I love the colors on this. 25 screens, Steve.
Yeah, no, and I know it's amazing, isn't it? And to be hand pulled. I mean, making each one of those is a laborious process, and it's done by hand. And again, getting back to the colors, that they have to have those exact colors the way that it appeared back then. You can't just go and say, I want to buy a Marvin Martian red, or I'd like to be able to buy some canine green. Those have to be mixed exactly to how they appeared on the screen back in 1948.
And
also,
also,
it's a great piece of art.
And also, notice too, Bugs has a little bit of a different look in 1948.
He did, and I always liked. It's my preference because every director had their own way of drawing Bugs Bunny. Everybody kind of takes a little bit of credit for having created Bugs, and they did to the extent that they evolved him and that they made them his own. Early Chuck Jones, 1940s Chuck Jones, is my favorite model of Bugs Bunny. That and Bob Clampett in the early days, but Chuck had a great model for Bugs Bunny in the 1940s, and even that color that they lightened him up a little bit later on. That's almost what they consider to be a taupe Bugs that was almost a little more brownish in color during the 1940s. Yeah, it's a great piece of art. Anybody who loves Marvin Martian, who likes the Warner Brothers cartoons, if you like Bugs Bunny, Marvin's a rare character. You don't see him in many. Again, he was only in 5 cartoons. His dog Canine was only in 2 cartoons, and this was the first one. So, in addition to 275 pieces, that is not a lot. If you like that, you cannot make a bad choice on that.
All right, we're going to move on to the next piece. Thanks, Steve. And this will be the last piece of the Chuck Jones, and then we're going to get into the kind of the grand finale of the show, Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and Cinderella. But anyway, here's one that should just fly out the door. Okay? And I think we have two, if I'm not mistaken, because I think we sold one and I think we had three. So I'd have to check on it, but I think there's two available. Anyway, this is an etching. It's a limited edition, 500 pieces, $195, Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, from Chuck Jones' original artwork. That is later on, that's how Chuck had reimagined Bugs Bunny. To really look almost kind of like a retired movie star. Now he's got, all the confidence of all of his work done behind him. He doesn't have to do anything. He's a star. He can sit there and relax and just pose. I'm Bugs Bunny. Here's I've got a carrot in the rabbit hole in my mailbox. This is a portrait of Bugs Bunny as the cinema star that he is. And you'll notice that later on, Chuck had kind of reimagined. See, it's always been my suspicion, because the animators had a mirror on their animation table. So when they were trying to draw an expression of a character, they would look at themselves, how that expression looked, so they could be able to draw it into the character. Well, I think a little bit later on, Chuck Jones started to make some of the characters to look a little bit more like him. And so, if you look at the Grinch, or if you look at, you can see some of the similarities of Chuck Jones's face and his characters. I think he just identified with them so much. But that's a classic image. That's from the original artwork that Chuck did. It's a great deal. It's a great starter point for somebody to. I have some of the etchings myself. A great starter price point for somebody to be able to get in, and a good gift price too. So yeah, that would be a real winner.
Yeah, $195, and it's only framed. You can't get it unframed. Just real quickly, if you could kind of cover the etching process, because I don't totally get it. It's beautiful. I love the piece, but I don't.
Again, it was they would take an original image and transfer it from, originally used to be done with like stones, and they would etch an image into like the stone, and then they would wash it with acid, and they would put the element that it was going to be transferred to a piece of paper or canvas, and it was transferred then onto that paper, and it was goes back to the Stone Age, really. But it's a wonderful piece of art with a key character, and again, it's going to make anybody smile who walks into your house and sees this star of Warner Brothers Studios.
All right, that's it for Warner Brothers tonight. I hope somebody grabbed one of these. We're going to go on now back to Disney with our grand finale, basically the three Disney princesses. Now, I'm sure there's been more princesses than those three, but these are the ones you think about when you think about the Disney princesses, right, Steve?
She's the first one. That's Snow White.
All right, that's the one I'm going to pull up next. Here it is. Snow White, original production drawing, used in the making of the movie in 1937. What do you say?
It's one of those artworks that almost speaks for itself. She's just so beautiful. You can see the animator's work. You can see how he drew in circles the expression on Snow White's face, the detail that was on her. That's just really a gorgeous piece of animation art, and the beginning of it all. And again, the gold standard that was used to put a cell on top of, and they would ink the cell with an ink line. In Snow White, I think they sometimes used like 7 different color ink lines, and then they would paint the colors on the back of the cell. There might have been like 11 different paint colors for Snow White. Matter of fact, they had, I don't know if I shared this with you, but Walt Disney would walk into the ink and paint department, and the painters were, they would put the inkers would put the ink lines on the top of the cells, the paint would go on the back of the cells, and sometimes there would be some top painting. Sometimes with Mickey's ears, they would paint on the top, the black of the ears on the top of the cell, so it didn't have any reflection at all. And on Snow White, what the painters did was to apply rouge to the top of the cell on Snow White's cheeks. And Walt Disney asked these girls, because that was, not you. They would usually, put the paint on the back of the cells, and he said, "Are you sure you girls know what you're doing?" And they said, "Mr. Disney, what do you think that it is we do every day?" So they,
You're fired.
they applied real makeup to the cells of Snow White. But that's just a gorgeous image there of her, what we would call blissing, having a blissful look. It's a relic. It's a wonderful piece of animation art. I
Yeah,
can tell you more stories about Snow White, but that it's wonderful that you have that piece to offer.
Yeah, it's not easy getting original production drawings of Snow White under $1,000. I mean, Snow White is historical in so many ways. I think not just animation, but in the movie industry as a whole.
Well, one of the top, films of all time. But it's difficult getting a drawing of Snow White or of Bambi or of Pinocchio or anything from the 1930s and 40s. Again, remember that they didn't survive. The only art that had really survived are what artists and animators would keep and take home from the studio, and what Disney would sell maybe later on at Disneyland in the 1950s and 60s, but they didn't really sell drawings at all. So this was something that an animator had thought of to take out of the sequence, that it was just so pretty stand alone by itself, for them to take home. That's just a lovely piece. And again, you could take a long time to try to get all the characters. If you were collecting drawings from Snow White, to be able to get all the dwarves. I still have people with wish lists for particular dwarves that I just haven't come across yet. But yes, under $1,000 for an original Snow White. Yeah, typically I would see something like that for a little bit closer to the $2,000 range. But it's a great bargain. And it's a lovely image at whatever the price was. That's
right.
A wonderful piece of animation art.
When you look at this and you think about what they had to do to make a cartoon or make a feature film, an animated feature film, starting with these drawings, and then do 12 of these for 1 second of film, and the film lasts for an hour and a half, and just for 1 second do 12 of these, and then from these the cells, and then the ink and the paint, and then under the camera and the background, and change it. You start thinking about all that, and you realize that this is like a lost art. It's been replaced by technology now with the computer generated animation. They don't do this anymore. Those guys who drew these things, they were real, not just artists, but it was a skill, it was a trade, these were craftsmen, these were artisans. It's gone forever. In some ways, there's a sadness to it. They don't make cartoons like this anymore. They don't make animated features like this anymore. It's all done with computers now.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lost art form. And you kind of have to remember that back then, too, it was 1937, and they were working on it for a couple of years before that. That it was still shortly after the Depression, and it was still in the middle of the Second World War. And the studios were places where the best fine artists, the best artists of the day could be able to get a job and to be able to get a steady paycheck. And Walt Disney had the vision of traveling around the world and recruiting the best artists from Europe and from Asia to come over and work in his little studio on Hyperion in Burbank. And I was just kind of reminded actually earlier that originally Snow White was designed by Grim Natwick, who was an animator at Max Fleischer's studio, and he animated Betty Boop. And if you ever see any early drawings of Snow White, She looks like Betty Boop. Actually, she had like the Betty Boop, Tweety kind of a head, and it was really Mark Davis who had evolved her into the character that you see now. But I was reminded earlier of the voice of Snow White was done by a girl. Her name was Adriana Casalati, and her father was a sequence director at Disney for the film. And they hadn't come across the voice yet for Snow White. And Mr. Casalati was on the phone with Walt Disney, and they were talking about, well, who should we use? We've auditioned all these girls to be the voice of Snow White. And Mr. Casalati's daughter, I think she was like 12, Adriana, excuse me, was on the extension line upstairs on the phone listening to this conversation. And she just piped in out of nowhere. She said, "Why can't I be the voice of Snow White?" And they thought, well, okay, let's give her a shot. And so they gave her an audition behind curtains because people at the studio knew who she was, as the kids would hang around the studio and such. And they ended up deciding on little, 12-year-old Adriana Casalati to be able to do the voice for her.
Wow.
Just a little side thing, about Snow White. But, this is the beginning of it all. This was the Snow White one. I'd have to look it up. You probably know, like 12 Academy Awards or something.
No, I really don't know, but obviously it was a lot. But did I hear you right? You're saying the voice of Snow White was a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
She might have been like 13, yeah. But little Adriana Casalati, a cute little story behind that. But, the artwork is it's historical, it's important, it's beautiful, and you just happen to have something at a very good bargain as well. So whoever manages to be able to snatch this one up is going to have a treasure that's going to be a family heirloom.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the next princess from 1950. Okay, it's Cinderella and Prince Charming. And this one, there's a lot to discuss about this one because you got two characters on one drawing.
Yeah.
And they're kind of in the upper right quadrant on this one.
Mm-hmm. It's a great, geez. Cinderella, as you know, it's kind of a phenomenon, I suppose, but Cinderella, is like the queen of the princesses, as it were. And this is the moment of the film at the end of it where she and the prince are going off happily ever after to get into the coach and to drive away. And so they're coming down the stairs. They're coming down the same stairs that when Cinderella was leaving earlier, when the clock struck 12, where she lost her glass slipper, they're going down the same stairs. And this is just before, once again, she loses her slipper. And the prince's father, the king, picks it up and hands it to her, and she gives the king a kiss. But this is the moment. This is the happily ever after moment. The birds are holding up her cape there, her wedding dress veil. The prince is waving to everybody. They're coming down the stairs. But Cinderella is right now, and has been for years, the princess that so many little girls identify with. And this is an original from 1950.
Right.
And again, to be able to have, it wasn't a long film either. So there's not a lot of artwork that had really survived from that.
I think it's under an hour, isn't it?
I think it's like 51 minutes.
And go ahead.
Now, Cinderella had 3 different outfits that she wore during the film. She had her what were called her drudgery clothes, when the stepsisters and the stepmother were giving her a bad time, and she was wearing rags basically. Then she had her gown that she wore to the ball that she met the prince at. And then at the end, she had her wedding dress. And it was just really for a few seconds of the film that she was wearing her wedding dress. And this is, I don't see something like that very often.
You know, interestingly, you know, as you and I were discussing this earlier in the week, you'll notice that, you know, 1650 is close to double the price of the Snow White, and the Snow White is 13 years older. And you know, you taught me something very interesting, and I went online and I did some checking around, and you're absolutely right. For whatever reason, which is kind of unexplainable to me, I'm dumbfounded. The Cinderella art is actually more rare, or must be more expensive, because it's more expensive than the Snow White.
Well,
Not
again,
all of them, but I mean,
no. It kind of really does sort of go across the board. There was not that much art again that had survived from the old days. There wasn't that much art that had survived that was taken home from the studio from Cinderella. There are some films like that again, you know, the studios destroyed as much as they could the original artwork when they were done with the film.
sure.
And they didn't want to have anybody get their hands on it at all. And there was not that much art that had survived from Cinderella. There wasn't that much art that survived from Dumbo, from Song of the South. You don't see very many pieces of Brer Fox. From Sleeping Beauty, there was not that much art that had survived. I think there was actually more drawings because of the more drawings and more cells. Well, I've certainly seen more drawings and cells from Snow White from 1937 than I've seen from Cinderella from 1950.
Right. You know, you and I discussed during the week about, for this particular piece, if I could find the frame in the movie of Snow White, of Cinderella, this frame, and then we could kind of superimpose it and show it.
Yeah.
And I told you I have it and I'll do it. Well, when I went to my library, I looked, and to my surprise, I don't have the Cinderella DVD or Blu-ray. I have practically everything else. I've got Peter Pan, I've got Lady and the Tramp, I've got Snow White, I've got Sleeping Beauty, I've got Lady and the Tramp? I've got quite a few. I mean, you know, but I don't have the Cinderella. I thought I did, but I don't. And they're not cheap. They're about $30 to get them, you know?
No, but it's a good point that you make, that and that it's really, there's a magic when somebody gets an original animation art drawing, a vintage original piece, like the Mickeys that you were showing earlier, or Snow White, or Cinderella, and to be able to freeze frame your DVD to that point in the film and stop frame it, and to see what's on your screen is what's on your wall. And what's on your wall was used to make that moment of the film. You know,
Right.
It's a great piece of film history. And unlike live action films, there was original artwork that was used to make these animated films with, and it's rare as heck.
Yeah.
But to have a moment like that, to have something Cinderella, that you can wait a long time to find an original, to have that moment of the film, you know, of the happily ever after moment. That's something that you're just, whatever the price ends up being later on down the road, when none of us can find any of this art anymore, it's something that you're never going to let go of.
Yeah, well, now I have to go out and buy the Cinderella. It's probably it's probably a Blu-ray. They might, a lot of them come together with Blu-ray and DVD, but I'm going to have to get it. I thought I had that Disney feature. That's one I don't have. Either that, or I had it at one point and I lent it out. Maybe. I mean, that's a possibility too.
Well, whoever of your collectors, your viewers, can snatch up any of these original drawings, you'll appreciate that it's done. That's the work of the animator,
Right.
And you're going to want to watch the film and to see your piece there. It's like here I've got next to me an original drawing of Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty that my wife really likes.
I love Maleficent because, again, which right now, as a matter of fact, that's kind of a good timing to mention that, because we're going to go to our next piece, which is from Sleeping Beauty, and it's my favorite. It's the creme de la creme. It's the capo di tutti tutti. It's the one I'm building up to all night. My favorite, Briar Rose because of the angular features in that movie. Of it's not the rounded characters, and of course, nobody typifies that more than Maleficent. Take a look at the chin and the. I love that angular look of the characters in this movie.
You know, it's funny. I was going to say, you know, regarding Maleficent, my wife Michelle Holmes is a very accomplished actor on the screen and stage, and every Halloween she dresses up as Maleficent with the green makeup and everything, and she's got the whole Disney costume. And then we go down to the Santa Monica Promenade and walk up and down in costume, and tourists stop and they take their picture with her and everything. You know, Maleficent is just one of those, you know, and especially with the Angelina Jolie movie of Maleficent, has like got now like a couple of more generations of fans of that. But what you have there of Princess Aurora, actually, when she's not Briar Rose, you know, again, one of the most beautiful my opinion, I think she's really the most beautiful of the Disney princesses.
There's no question.
Funny thing too, you know, a lot of people don't really know. If you look at the voices who did the characters that they ended up drawing, there was more of a similarity, a resemblance to the characters, the people who voiced the characters, to how they ended up being drawn. And the voice of Briar Rose and Princess Aurora was done by Mary Costa, who was an opera singer. And if you look at her picture, go and look it on the internet, she looks like Briar Rose. But that's just a gorgeous detail. It's signed by Mark Davis, who was one of the. Is it signed by Mark Davis?
It is. It's signed by Mark Davis, which I think has to add something. I mean, this to me is a steal. At $1,000, this is a giveaway right here.
Well, it's a great value.
I mean,
for sure.
Full figure. Her eyes are wide open.
Briar Rose, Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, Prince Philip. If you can be able to get any characters, any originals from Sleeping Beauty. Mark Davis, back in the early days, for those who do not know, back in the 1930s, Walt Disney put together his group of master animators and directors, and he named them after the Supreme Court. He called them the Nine Old Men. And these were the guys who had created the characters, who had directed all the cartoons and the films and the animated features up into like the 1960s and early 70s. And Mark Davis was probably the most famous and prolific of the Disney animators. He also created most of the Disney villains and created the Disney princesses too. Created Tinkerbell, did most of a lot of the important work on Snow White, Briar Rose, and Princess Aurora, one and the same. He had created her look, and you have his signature on there. He's a Disney legend. And that is just a fabulous and important piece of animation art signed by one of the Disney legends.
I think he lived a pretty long life too, didn't he?
Also, again, you know, like 89 years old. You know, these guys they had something to look forward to, their art to create every day. Mm-hmm. He also, you know, like into his 90s or 89, I think he was. When he passed away. A great animator and an important architect of the whole Disney look. And that was one of his characters that he created.
I think, Ronnie, in the folder where just the still shots were, I don't know if you grabbed it, but I put in there a picture. I found an image, I think it was of Mark Davis and Mary Costa. Did you have that picture in there, or did you leave that out?
I got that.
Did you? Take a look at this, Steve. You know, I was pulling some images, and I think it's the two of them. There it is. Mark Davis
Oh, look at that.
and Mary Costa. Now, Mary Costa was the voice of
Yeah.
Princess
Yeah.
Aurora.
A Briar Rose and Princess Aurora. Right. Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
Very nice.
nice work,
So,
Ronnie.
yeah. And isn't it funny? They just did that a lot of times the guys who voiced the characters, they ended up drawing them to look like the character.
And also, Ronnie, there was a picture that I was able to find online. Well, actually, from our source. There it is. Yeah, here. It is unframed. It's not a perfect picture,
Oh, cool.
and we didn't have it this way, so we can't really zoom in. But unless there's a way to, I don't know if you could do it in the bottom right corner. Can you see that?
This here.
Yeah, can't really see it. And Ronnie's going to try his best to blow it up, I guess. But in the lower right corner, and again, you don't see it because it's matted over here, but I think it says 53, and it's circled.
Oh, all right.
I think
Well,
that gives it a
again,
little extra value. Oh wait, Ronnie's doing it.
I'll tell you the significance of that. Actually,
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, is that is just like there's another piece that you were showing me. Excuse me. That was a drawing done by the chief animator. So
Right.
in this case, that was a drawing that was done by Mark Davis.
Right.
Not just something. Sometimes these guys sign their names to characters that they did, but didn't necessarily, because Mark Davis was a director. He was a directing animator on that. So like one perfect drawing out of like 1,000 of them, the directing animator would draw the character. So the rest of the animators knew how she was supposed to look in that particular sequence of the film. So that is a key animator's production drawing and signed by the key directing animator.
It-
was Mark Davis.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, and also too that in Sleeping Beauty was like the first, I think, like 70 millimeter or panorama film that they did, and so the animation paper is 16 field.
right. It's
So
bigger.
that actually measures about 16 inches wide by about 13 inches high. before
Yeah,
it's
and you take a look at the frame size. It's pretty large, 17 and a quarter by, what is that, 25, Ronnie?
21.25.
Okay, so 21 and a quarter by 17. So I'm going to hold it. You can kind of see. Can I pull it, Ronnie?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to just pull it here. So you can kind of see how big this is. And Steve's right. It's on 16 field paper as opposed to the 12, so it's a little larger. And the frame's got a pretty wide mat. But just the fact that it's signed by Mark Davis and it was one of his drawings. And
Larry, because you have an original Princess Aurora drawn by one of the most famous Disney legends that he did himself, that was used for the film to be able to bring Snow White up to the screen, and signed, and less than $1,000 framed.
it's a steal.
I'm let me know tomorrow if you still have it.
I mean, this because
Seriously.
you probably got a whole Rolodex of, probably 20 guys that would jump on this.
No, I'm thinking for me.
Oh.
No, it's a great drawing. It's important. It's an important artwork. It's a great expression. It's everything that you want in a
Yeah.
premium piece of animation.
That's why I saved it as the last piece of the show. I figured, I didn't want to spill the beans. But I mean, this, Snow White, great piece. But this one,
Love that. Love
signed by Davis, full figure. Anyway, somebody needs to jump on this, guys. Take a real hard look at what we've got here.
that. Well, congratulations on getting such a really fabulous group of animation art and vintage Disney.
Yep.
And some important pieces and key characters. Mickey Mouse, you have the dwarves from Snow White, which are a terrific bargain. You have original production drawings that were done in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. This is, you've gone into the animation art business. It's going away. There was only so much of the art that
Right.
had survived. They'll still keep on making cartoons, but they're not going to make them like this anymore.
Yep.
And they're not going to make them with original artwork like this. These are golden age classics, and I don't want to come across salesy because I'm a historian, but that's great art.
It really is, and I really like selling the onesies. I mean, the limiteds are great, and they're that's the direction the whole animation art collectible field is moving in, because you can't get the onesies anymore, the originals. But and we had some great limited editions tonight, some great ones. But I like the fact that if you buy this one, this is the piece you're going to get, which means I'm responsible for shipping this, Steve. So I'm going to have to make sure I get the right size boxes. I've got plenty. I got to pack it right.
You'll pack it beautifully and professionally.
Oh yeah, I mean it came.
Certificate of
It
authenticity.
came really packed professionally with proper corners and everything. So but it all came in one big giant box. But I'm going to get the right size boxes and everything. I usually always do it really professional. But I'm just saying, it's a one-off. It's one piece. You buy it, this is the one, and that's it.
And again, you'll watch the moment of the film, and where that drawing was used in it, and the magic will surprise you that you'll think, "Wow, I have that only piece. This film that millions and millions of people see all the time. I have that drawing that
Right.
was used to be able to make."
Yeah.
Princess Aurora and Briar Rose for Disney Studio. Disney doesn't have it. I have it. And
That's a good point. Yeah, it really
great
is.
treasure.
Before we say goodnight, we showed that picture of Mark Davis and Mary Costa, the voice of Briar Rose. There was another picture I pulled, and I forgot to mention it. Yes. I'm not going to say who this is. I'm going to make you tell us who it is, because you knew him and you met him and you told some of his stories.
Oh, Virgil.
It's Virgil Ross.
Yeah.
And we have one of his pieces signed by him before he died. Now, by looking at this picture, can you guesstimate as to maybe what year this was? Because I think he died in 96, as you said. Would this be like in the late 80s or early 90s? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was like, late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Great, great animator. He was the best animator, I think, that worked at Warner Brothers during the golden age. He was there from like 1939, I think, to 1967. A wonderful human being, but nobody drew Bugs Bunny and the characters more on model to how they looked in the cartoons than Virgil did. So
Yeah.
the fact that you have an original artwork of his that was used for Warner Brothers' best-selling limited edition. This is not a limited. This is an original that he did and that he drew and that he signed.
Yeah.
And for a really good deal on that too.
Yeah.
I would own that piece. I own Virgil Ross drawings.
I know you do.
I know how great his artwork is, and that he's not. None of these guys are around anymore. So, the fact that this is a moment in time when your viewers have a chance to be able to own a piece of American art and animation history.
Well, Steve, this has been a blast tonight, and it's just going to get better from here. Just like I said, my dad always told me, from small acorns, giant oak trees grow. And we'll just keep getting better and better, and we'll keep moving it forward, okay?
Well, congratulations on having such a great group of art. I wouldn't be surprised when you hang up that much of it is gone. You've made some great selections, and whoever gets them is going to have just wonderful treasures and family heirlooms.
Right, and if you're coming in now at the end, and I've been watching the audience here, it's been kind of fluctuating, going down, then some new people must be coming back or whatever. If you just came in at any point in the middle of the show, you can just hang right there, and right after this one, ends, it's going to replay again, and we're going to keep replaying it till probably about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and so you'll still have the opportunity, okay, to watch the replay, the live replay, okay? We call it the live replay because later, perhaps Sunday or Monday, whenever, we'll make the replay available where you can actually pull it forward to any point in the movie. We're going to just keep the live stream going, so it's going to be in real time, and we'll play it till tomorrow morning. Steve, thanks so much. We'll see you next time. I'm not sure if we're going to do a live show next week. We might do one in 2 weeks, okay? So we'll figure that out over the weekend and hope to talk. And, you know, we used a little different technology tonight with Steve's hookup. Steve, did it work okay for you? Were you able to see everything in live real time?
Kind of seamless. It's so much easier than
Skype?
than Skyping. Really,
Okay.
everything just with a snap. But again, congratulations
Okay.
on having great art. Whoever gets these pieces is going to be very happy. They're much more impressive
Yeah.
in person. And good job. And I'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Talk soon.
Okay.
Much love. Well, guys, that's going to do it for tonight. Just a great show. Steve was just great with his information, as he always is. Do yourself a favor, pick up some pieces tonight, pick up a piece, whatever it takes, and, get happy. All right, guys, until next week, I'm Larry Megan. Peace, love, and all good things.